Sweat trickled down the Mossad agent's brow as he stared through the crosshairs of his rifle scope. His target, a high-ranking Hamas official, was in his sights, but he hesitated to pull the trigger. This wasn't a typical Mossad mission. No brutal interrogations, no enhanced persuasion tactics. Those methods were strictly off-limits. Instead, he had to rely on his wits, his training, and an unwavering commitment to Mossad's principles. The agent took a deep breath, his finger hovering over the trigger. If he missed this opportunity, the trail might run cold. Israel's national security hung in the balance. But he couldn't bring himself to end a life, not like this. Lowering the rifle, he radioed his handler. "The target is in sight, but I'm aborting the operation. There has to be another way." "Another way?" The handler's voice crackled with frustration. "This is our best chance to get the intel we need." "I understand, but Mossad doesn't torture, and I won't start now." The agent turned his gaze to the bustling streets below. There has to be a more ingenious solution. Mossad had long prided itself on its sophisticated intelligence-gathering methods, always seeking to outsmart its adversaries rather than resorting to brutal tactics. This mission would test that principle to its limits. The agent scanned the area, his mind racing. He spotted a group of children playing in a nearby alley, their laughter echoing through the streets. An idea began to form in his mind, one that would require meticulous planning and flawless execution. Holstering his rifle, he swiftly descended the building and made his way through the winding streets, blending seamlessly with the local population. He needed to establish contact with his target, but not through conventional means. Over the next few days, the agent meticulously laid the groundwork for his plan. He befriended the children in the alley, winning them over with small gifts and promises of adventure. Meanwhile, he continued to monitor the Hamas official, studying his routines and identifying his weaknesses. The day of the operation arrived, and the agent positioned himself in the alley, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. He watched as the Hamas official strolled down the street, completely unaware of the trap that had been set. Suddenly, one of the children ran into the street, seemingly chasing a ball. The official, caught off guard, swerved to avoid the child, only to be surrounded by a group of laughing, playful kids. The agent seized his opportunity, quickly approaching the distracted target. "Excuse me, sir," the agent said in a polite tone. "I'm afraid your car has a flat tire. Allow me to assist you." The official, flustered by the commotion, reluctantly agreed. As the agent bent down to inspect the tire, he slipped a small device in the official's coat pocket, one that would allow Mossad to monitor his every move and conversation. With a disarming smile, the agent straightened up and handed the official a business card. "If you ever need any assistance, please don't hesitate to call." The official, relieved to have the situation resolved, thanked the agent and continued on his way, unaware of the web of surveillance that had been woven around him. As the agent watched the target disappear into the crowd, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Mossad had proven once again that its agents could outsmart their adversaries without resorting to the brutality of torture. The fate of Israel's national security was now in their hands, and they were more than ready to face the challenges ahead. The target. The Mossad agent's ingenious ploy had paid off, securing a crucial surveillance device on the unsuspecting Hamas official. But this was no mere routine operation. The fate of Israel's national security hung in the balance. The target was Khalid Mashal, the political leader of Hamas, the Islamist group that had been waging a deadly campaign of suicide bombings and other attacks against Israeli civilians. Mashal was considered the mastermind behind these operations, directing the organization's strategy from his base in the Syrian capital of Damascus. Mashal's importance to the conflict could not be overstated. As the head of Hamas' political wing, he served as the public face of the organization, delivering fiery speeches that galvanized Palestinian support and stoked tensions with Israel. But his true power lay in his ability to coordinate the group's terrorist activities, providing resources, training, and tactical guidance to the suicide bombers and other operatives on the ground. The stakes were high. With Mashal's removal, Israel hoped to cripple Hamas' operational capabilities, buying precious time to shore up its defenses and seek a path to peace. But the risks were equally grave. If the Mossad operation failed, it could provoke a devastating backlash, with Hamas retaliating with even more deadly attacks. The geopolitical context only added to the complexity of the situation. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict had raged for decades, with no end in sight. The rise of Hamas, which had emerged in the late 1980s as a more militant alternative to the secular Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, had further complicated the path to a lasting peace agreement. Moreover, Mashal's close ties to Syria and Iran, both of which provided financial and material support to Hamas, made him a key player in the broader regional power struggle. Any action taken against him could have far-reaching consequences, potentially drawing in other actors and escalating the conflict. The Mossad agent understood the gravity of the situation. He had spent the last few days meticulously planning his next move, leveraging the surveillance device he had planted on Mashal to gather intelligence and identify vulnerabilities.
Now, with the target's routine firmly established, the time had come to execute the operation. The plan was audacious, but the agent had little choice. Conventional methods of assassination or abduction were off the table, as they would almost certainly provoke a violent backlash from Hamas and its allies. Instead, the Mossad had devised a more subtle, yet no less effective, approach. The agent's initial contact with Mashal had been a success, establishing a veneer of innocuousness that would allow him to infiltrate the Hamas leader's inner circle. Now, he would leverage that position to gain access to Mashal, all the while continuing to gather intelligence and lay the groundwork for the next phase of the operation. The ultimate goal was to neutralize Mashal without resorting to violence, a challenge that would require the Mossad agent to draw upon all of his intelligence, resourcefulness, and guile. Failure was not an option. The fate of Israel's security and potentially the stability of the entire region hung in the balance. As the agent made his way back to his safe house, his mind raced with the possibilities. He knew that the coming days would be a delicate dance, a game of cat and mouse where a single misstep could have devastating consequences. But he was confident in his abilities and in the unwavering commitment of his Mossad colleagues. The stage was set for a high-stakes showdown, one that would test the limits of the Mossad's intelligence-gathering prowess and the agent's own resolve. The future of the conflict hung in the balance, and the Mossad was determined to emerge victorious. The strike. The Mossad agent returned to his safe house. His mind raced with the possibilities. He knew that the coming days would be a delicate dance, a game of cat and mouse where a single misstep could have devastating consequences. But he was confident in his abilities and in the unwavering commitment of his Mossad colleagues. First, he needed to establish a new cover identity, one that would allow him to infiltrate Mashal's inner circle without arousing suspicion. After rifling through a cache of passports, disguises, and other false identities, he selected his persona, Amir Khalidi, a wealthy Lebanese businessman with ties to the Gulf states. Donning a crisp suit, a neatly trimmed beard, and an air of self-assurance, the agent transformed himself into Amir. He practiced the nuances of his new character, perfecting the subtle mannerisms and speech patterns that would help him blend seamlessly into Mashal's world. With his cover identity established, the agent set out to make contact with the Hamas leader. He booked a suite at an upscale hotel in Damascus, where Mashal was known to frequent, and began laying the groundwork for their chance encounter. Over the next few days, the agent, now Amir, made a show of his wealth and influence, hosting lavish dinners and networking with the city's elite.
He dropped subtle hints about his admiration for the Palestinian cause, carefully cultivating an image of a sympathetic outsider with the means to assist the Hamas leadership. The breakthrough came at a funeral for a prominent Hamas official. As Mashal delivered a fiery eulogy, the agent approached him, offering his condolences and a discreet invitation to discuss a mutually beneficial opportunity. Mashal, intrigued by the prospect of securing new sources of funding, agreed to a private meeting. In the plush confines of the hotel suite, the agent and Mashal engaged in a delicate dance of diplomacy and deception. Amir presented himself as a wealthy businessman seeking to invest in Gaza, dangling the promise of lucrative deals and unfettered access to materials and resources. As the conversation progressed, the agent subtly steered it towards the topics he needed to gather intelligence on: Mashal's strategic plans, the organization's financing, and the identities of key operatives. He listened intently, offering occasional words of encouragement and feigning genuine interest in the Hamas leader's vision. Unbeknownst to Mashal, the agent had planted a series of small cameras and audio recording devices throughout the suite, capturing every word and gesture. Back at the safe house, a team of Mossad analysts pored over the data, piecing together a comprehensive intelligence picture. Over the following weeks, the agent maintained his cover, meeting with Mashal on several more occasions. Each time, he would introduce new opportunities and contacts, slowly gaining the Hamas leader's trust and access to sensitive information. The Mossad operation was a masterclass in precision and subtlety. The agent's disguise was flawless, his cover story airtight. He navigated the social circles of Damascus with the ease of a seasoned socialite, charming his way into the confidence of Mashal and his lieutenants. As the intelligence gathered, the Mossad team back home formulated a plan to neutralize the Hamas leader without resorting to violence. They knew that any overt action against Mashal would likely provoke a violent backlash, putting innocent lives at risk. Instead, they devised a more ingenious solution, one that would leverage Mashal's own weaknesses and the intelligence they had gathered. The agent, still in his role as Emir, would invite the Hamas leader to a private meeting, ostensibly to discuss a major new investment opportunity. On the day of the operation, the agent meticulously prepared the suite, ensuring that every detail was in place. Hidden cameras and microphones were discreetly positioned, and a team of Mossad operatives waited in the wings, ready to spring into action at the first sign of trouble. As Mashal arrived, the agent greeted him with a warm handshake and a genuine-looking smile.
The Hamas leader, lulled into a false sense of security, settled into a plush armchair, unaware of the trap that was about to be sprung. The agent began outlining the investment proposal, his voice calm and measured. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a group of Mossad agents flooded the suite, surrounding Mashal. The Hamas leader, his eyes wide with shock and fear, realized too late that he had been ensnared in an elaborate sting operation. With his cover now blown, the agent stepped forward, his expression hardening. "Khalid Mashal," he said, his voice tinged with a mixture of triumph and regret. "You're under arrest." The moment of truth. Mashal's eyes darted around the room, desperately searching for an escape route, but the Mossad agents had him surrounded. The agent, now shedding the persona of Amir Khalidi, stepped forward, his expression grim. "It's over, Mashal," he said, his voice laced with a hint of regret. "You're under arrest." Mashal opened his mouth to protest, but the agent cut him off, raising a hand. "Don't bother. We've been monitoring your activities for weeks, and we have enough evidence to put you away for a very long time." The Hamas leader's face contorted with rage, but he remained silent, his shoulders slumping in defeat. The agent glanced at his team, and with a nod, they moved in, swiftly securing Mashal's hands behind his back with a set of handcuffs. As the agents escorted the prisoner out of the suite, the agent couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. This was no ordinary victory. The ramifications of their actions would reverberate through the region, potentially igniting a firestorm of retaliation from Hamas and its allies. Back at the Mossad headquarters, the intelligence analysts pored over the mountains of data gathered during the operation, meticulously assembling a comprehensive dossier on Mashal's activities and the inner workings of Hamas. The agent watched on, his mind racing with the implications of their success. Suddenly, the door burst open, and the agency's director strode in, his face a mask of barely contained urgency. "We have a situation," he announced, his voice terse. The agent straightened, his senses heightened. "What is it?" "Hamas has caught wind of the Shal's capture," the director said, his brow furrowed with concern. "They're mobilizing their forces, and intelligence suggests they're planning a retaliatory strike. We need to move quickly to neutralize the threat." The agent's heart raced as the director laid out the details of the emerging crisis. Hamas was on the move, and they had to act fast to prevent a devastating attack. Time was of the essence, and the slightest misstep could have catastrophic consequences. Without hesitation, the agent assembled a team of the Mossad's most skilled operatives, each one handpicked for their expertise and unwavering dedication to the mission. They pored over the intelligence, formulating a plan that would allow them to stay one step ahead of Hamas and neutralize the threat before it could be realized. As the sun began to set, the team moved out, their movements swift and silent. They navigated the winding streets of Damascus, their senses heightened, their weapons at the ready. The agent led the way, his mind focused on the task at hand, his heart pounding with the weight of the responsibility he carried. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, brandishing a weapon. The agent reacted instinctively, his own firearm trained on the target. In the split second that followed, the air was shattered by the crack of gunfire, and the figure crumpled to the ground, unmoving. The agent paused, his breathing heavy, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of additional threats. The rest of the team moved in, securing the area and confirming the identity of the fallen assailant, a Hamas operative, no doubt sent to intercept them. With the immediate danger neutralized, the agent pressed on, his team following closely behind.
They moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, each member anticipating the other's actions, their coordination flawless. As they neared their objective, the agent could feel the tension mounting. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of weeks of meticulous planning and painstaking intelligence gathering. Failure was not an option. The team took their positions, each one assigned a specific role in the intricate operation. The agent took a deep breath, his finger resting lightly on the trigger of his weapon, his eyes fixed on the target. In the moments that followed, time seemed to slow to a crawl. The agent watched, his senses heightened, as the plan unfolded with perfect synchronicity. The target, unaware of the impending trap, moved into position, and the agent knew that this was their chance. With a steady hand, he squeezed the trigger, sending a single, precise shot towards the target. The bullet struck true, and the target crumpled to the ground, a look of shock and disbelief frozen on his face. The agent exhaled slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. The operation had been a success, but the true implications of their actions were only just beginning to sink in. The fate of the region now hung in the balance, and the Mossad knew that the battle had only just begun. The aftermath. The air hung thick with tension as the Mossad agent watched the figure crumple to the ground, a single bullet wound in the center of his chest. Khalid Mashal, the elusive leader of Hamas, lay motionless, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The agent's heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had executed the plan flawlessly, neutralizing the target without resorting to the brutal tactics that had long been the hallmark of Mossad operations. But the weight of the consequences was already beginning to settle on his shoulders. As the team secured the area and confirmed Mashal's identity, the agent couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. This was no ordinary victory. The ramifications of their actions would reverberate through the region, potentially igniting a firestorm of retaliation from Hamas and its allies. Back at the Mossad headquarters, the intelligence analysts pored over the mountains of data gathered during the operation, meticulously assembling a comprehensive dossier on Mashal's activities and the inner workings of Hamas. The agent watched on, his mind racing with the implications of their success. Suddenly, the door burst open, and the agency's director strode in, his face a mask of barely contained urgency. "We have a situation," he announced, his voice terse. The agent straightened, his senses heightened. "What is it?" "Hamas has caught wind of Mashal's capture," the director said, his brow furrowed with concern. "They're mobilizing their forces, and intelligence suggests they're planning a retaliatory strike. We need to move quickly to neutralize the threat." The agent's heart sank. He knew that the elimination of Mashal would have serious consequences, but the speed with which Hamas had reacted was staggering. They had clearly been prepared for such an eventuality, and the Mossad's success had only served to galvanize their resolve. Without hesitation, the agent assembled a team of the Mossad's most skilled operatives, each one hand-picked for their expertise and unwavering dedication to the mission. They pored over the intelligence, formulating a plan that would allow them to stay one step ahead of Hamas and neutralize the threat before it could be realized. As the sun began to set, the team moved out, their movements swift and silent. They navigated the winding streets of Damascus, their senses heightened, their weapons at the ready. The agent led the way, his mind focused on the task at hand, his heart pounding with the weight of the responsibility he carried. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, brandishing a weapon. The agent reacted instinctively, his own firearm trained on the target. In the split second that followed, the air was shattered by the crack of gunfire, and the figure crumbled to the ground, unmoving. The agent paused, his breathing heavy, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of additional threats. The rest of the team moved in, securing the area and confirming the identity of the fallen assailant, a Hamas operative, no doubt sent to intercept them. With the immediate danger neutralized, the agent pressed on, his team following closely behind. They moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, each member anticipating the other's actions, their coordination flawless. As they neared their objective, the agent could feel the tension mounting.
This was the moment of truth, the culmination of weeks of meticulous planning and painstaking intelligence gathering. Failure was not an option. The team took their positions, each one assigned a specific role in the intricate operation. The agent took a deep breath, his finger resting lightly on the trigger of his weapon, his eyes fixed on the target. In the moments that followed, time seemed to slow to a crawl. The agent watched, his senses heightened, as the plan unfolded with perfect synchronicity.
The target, unaware of the impending trap, moved into position, and the agent knew that this was their chance. With a steady hand, he squeezed the trigger, sending a single, precise shot towards the target. The bullet struck true, and the target crumpled to the ground, a look of shock and disbelief frozen on his face. The agent exhaled slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. The operation had been a success, but the true implications of their actions were only just beginning to sink in. The fate of the region now hung in the balance, and the Mossad knew that the battle had only just begun. As the team secured the scene and prepared to extract Mashal's body, the agent couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He knew that the fallout from this operation would be severe, with Hamas and its allies undoubtedly seeking to retaliate in the most devastating way possible. The Mossad had struck a significant blow against the organization, crippling its leadership and disrupting its operations. But at what cost? The agent couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger and more complex conflict, one that would test the limits of Israel's intelligence capabilities and the resolve of its people. Back at headquarters, the director convened an emergency meeting, his face etched with concern. "Gentlemen, we've achieved a major victory, but the price may be higher than we anticipated. Hamas is mobilizing, and we have credible intelligence that they're planning a retaliatory strike of unprecedented scale." The agent listened intently as the director outlined the potential scenarios, each one more dire than the last. Hamas was known for its ruthless tactics, and the elimination of Mashal would only serve to harden their resolve and embolden their fighters. The geopolitical ramifications were equally troubling. The region was already a powder keg, with tensions simmering between Israel, the Palestinian territories, and the broader Middle East. The Mossad's actions had the potential to ignite a firestorm that could engulf the entire region, with devastating consequences for all involved. As the meeting drew to a close, the director turned to the agent, his eyes piercing. "You carried out this operation with distinction, but the battle is far from over. We must be prepared for the worst, and will need every ounce of your skill and dedication to navigate the challenges that lie ahead."
The agent nodded, his resolve hardening. He knew that the fate of Israel's national security, and perhaps even the stability of the entire region, now rested on his shoulders. The Mossad had delivered a decisive blow, but the true test was yet to come. With a deep breath, the agent turned and headed back to the field, ready to face whatever challenges lay in wait. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The battle for the soul of the Middle East had only just begun. The final chapter. The fallout from the Mossad's bold strike against Khalid Mashal was immediate and severe. Within hours, Hamas had mobilized its forces, unleashing a wave of retaliatory attacks across Israel that left dozens dead and hundreds wounded. Suicide bombers struck in bustling city centers, rocket barrages rained down on border communities, and armed militants launched coordinated assaults on military outposts. The violence was relentless, shattering the fragile peace that had taken root in the region. In the corridors of power, the consequences reverberated with equal intensity. Israel's political leadership found itself under intense scrutiny, both at home and on the world stage. Critics condemned the Mossad's operation as a reckless provocation that had thrust the region into a spiral of escalating conflict. The international community, already deeply divided over the Israeli-Palestinian crisis, was quick to condemn the violence. Calls for restraint and renewed diplomacy echoed from the halls of the United Nations, while the United States found itself in the delicate position of balancing its long-standing alliance with Israel and the growing global outcry. The Mossad agent at the center of the operation watched the unfolding chaos with a mixture of grim determination and lingering unease. He knew that the stakes had been high, but the price of success was proving to be far greater than anyone had anticipated. As the violence raged on, the agent and his Mossad colleagues worked tirelessly to gather intelligence and devise new strategies to counter the Hamas onslaught. They knew that the fate of their nation hung in the balance, and failure was not an option. In the months that followed, the conflict escalated into a full-blown war, with both sides unleashing the full might of their military and intelligence capabilities.
the streets of Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories became the battleground for a brutal and unforgiving campaign, with civilians caught in the crossfire. The Mossad's role in this escalating conflict was both crucial and controversial. Their intelligence-gathering operations, their infiltration of Hamas networks, and their targeted strikes against the organization's leadership were instrumental in blunting the impact of the retaliatory attacks. But the agent and his colleagues were keenly aware that their actions had unleashed a cycle of violence that threatened to engulf the entire region.
The political fallout was equally damaging, as Israel found itself increasingly isolated on the global stage, its reputation as a beacon of democratic values tarnished by the brutality of the conflict. As the war dragged on, the Mossad agent grappled with the weight of his decisions. Had the operation against Mashal been worth the staggering human toll? Had the Mossad's commitment to outsmarting its adversaries been compromised by the need to resort to ever more aggressive tactics? These questions haunted the agent, even as he continued to play a pivotal role in the intelligence war against Hamas. He knew that the long-term consequences of the Mossad's actions would reverberate for decades, shaping the course of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the broader geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. In the end, the war came to an uneasy ceasefire, with neither side emerging as a clear victor. Hamas had been crippled, its leadership decimated, and its operational capabilities severely degraded. But the cost had been staggering, with thousands of lives lost on both sides, and the region left in a state of fragile, tentative peace. The Mossad agent, his once pristine reputation tarnished by the controversy surrounding the operation against Mashal, found himself at a crossroads. He had dedicated his life to the service of his country, but the moral and ethical quandaries he had faced had shaken him to the core. As he contemplated his future, the agent knew that the legacy of the Mossad's actions would linger long after he had retired. The operation against Khalid Mashal had become a pivotal moment in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a turning point that had irrevocably altered the course of the region. In the years that followed, scholars and historians would pore over the details of the operation, analyzing its strategic and political implications. The agent's role, once cloaked in the secrecy of Mossad's intelligence work, would become the subject of intense scrutiny and debate. But for the agent, the true significance of the operation lay not in its historical impact, but in the personal toll it had exacted. He had been forced to confront the harsh realities of his profession, the delicate balance between national security and moral responsibility. As he stepped away from the Mossad, the agent knew that the lessons he had learned would continue to shape his worldview and his understanding of the complex, often contradictory forces that drove the conflicts in the Middle East. He had seen firsthand the devastating consequences of the pursuit of power, and he was determined to use that knowledge to advocate for a more just and peaceful future. The operation against Khalid Mashal had been a defining moment in the Mossad's history, a testament to the agency's intelligence capabilities and its unwavering commitment to the defense of Israel. But it had also highlighted the moral and ethical dilemmas that came with the territory, and the agent knew that the true legacy of the operation would be measured not in its tactical success, but in the lessons it had imparted and the ways in which it had shaped the course of history.